Hello, welcome to Scrapy Part 1, the tutorial series for the modern Scrapy developer. In this episode, we're going to get our basic spider up and running with our basic project. We're going to talk about some of the simpler settings, and we're going to talk about how to extract data and output it into a JSON file using Scrapy's built-in output processors. So I'm going to jump right in. I have a folder here, a blank folder open in my code editor. Now I'm going to use UV to install and manage my Python version and my packages. You can, of course, use pip as well. UV is just my preference. So I'm going to do UV init, and then I'm going to do UV add Scrapy. We need to install the package, and then we need to activate our virtual environment like so. Now this is the command on Mac and Linux. It will be slightly different on Windows, but you'll be able to find it there. Now we have our project, everything we need installed for our project. So we can do Scrapy start project. I'm going to call this tutorial. I'm just going to do a dot to make sure it goes in this folder here. Now that that's run, we can see in the top left-hand corner of the screen in my file viewer that we have a tutorial folder. I'm also going to run this Scrapy gen spider command too, gen spider, and we're going to call this books, and the site we're going to do is toscrape.com. This is going to build out a basic, simple spider shell that we can then build upon. So we open up our tutorial folder here. We can see we have our spiders with our book spider, which is what we just created with our generating through the CLI. We have the items, which is empty at the moment, middleware, pipelines, and our settings. We're going to cover items, middlewares, and pipelines in a further video. Now, the few settings that we are going to change in this respect is we're going to do this to false, simply because the website that we are going to be working on, our test site, doesn't actually have a robots.txt file, so we would see a 404. The other thing we're going to change is the concurrency. Now, concurrency in Scrapy is handled with these commands. I'm going to make this 16, and I'm going to remove the download delay. Again, this is our test site, so please feel free to use these concurrency settings. But when you're scraping in the wild, be mindful of this. With the settings done and out the way, we're going to be working within the book spider file, and this is our book spider class, which is inheriting from scrapy.spider. Essentially what we want to do with this is we want to utilize the start method and the pass methods to actually go to URLs and then pass the data out of the HTML. Let's clear up the terminal and delete some of the stuff here. We don't want this. We don't need this. We're going to do this ever so slightly differently. I'm going to say that the URL, which is going to be equal to a string, and I'm going to go and grab that from my other browser window here, and I'm going to open up the first product and just grab the URL, because this is the URL that we're going to work with to start with for the first product. Now we want to work with actually making requests. And to do that, we're going to be using async. Scrapy now has the async reactor built in, and it works as default. So we're going to do async def, and the method we use here is start, and we reference self. And from here, we can yield out our Scrapy request, and that's done by doing Scrapy.request, and this takes in the URL, and it will also need a callback. Sorry, this should be self.url because it's been in the class, and the callback is going to be equal to the function that we want to send the response to be handled when this request is made from our start request here. Now I want to make a new function for this, so I'm going to call this one self.passBook, because this is going to be a book page. Now we need to build this function out. Again, async def, and this is the passBook function, so we call passBook. This is going to take in self and the response object when we obviously get the response back from the website in HTML. In this case, we want to be able to send it to this function that's going to pass it out for us. Now this function is going to yield out a dictionary. In this case, it's going to yield a dictionary. In further episodes, we'll be yielding item classes. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put in a preliminary field, and we're just going to call this URL. And because we have access to this response object here, we can say response.url like so. Now this is the very beginning and basics of our spider, and all we're going to do is we're telling it to go to this page with this request, pass the response with the passBook function, and we only want to yield out the response.url. So I'm going to do Scrapy crawl, and we've called this books, which is the name of the spider. You can see that up here. I'm going to run this. And if I zoom this up a little bit, here is the URL that we got This is our output from our yield function, from our yield from our parse book function here, which is the response.url here. So this is essentially an item that has been output from the spider, and we can see this down here. Item scrape count is 1. This output from Scrapy is very useful and very well worth looking at. We will look at that a little bit more as we go on. Now, response.url is not that useful to us by itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to comment this out for the moment. And I'm going to put parse in here instead. And we're going to use the Scrapy shell to figure out where the information is on the page that we want to actually extract. So I'm going to grab this, and we're going to run Scrapy shell with this URL. This is going to use our project to download and store the HTML page in memory, so we can now actually work with it. And if you want to see what Scrapy actually sees, which is very useful, you can do this to view response, and you'll see what we're actually looking at and working with. So we have access to the response object, which we can see here, and then we can do things like response.css, and this is going to use CSS selectors to select data, or elements rather, from the page. Now one of those is going to be called title, so I put that in there, and we can see that is the element that matches that selector. From here, what we can do is we can actually say, well, I want the text from this, so we're going to use Scrapy's HTML parser, which is called parcel, and we're going to do the 2 colons dot and the text. If we hit enter, we can see that it's not really any different, but we want to do .get, and this is actually going to give us just the text back. Now we can see that there's new lines in this, but this is just Python string, so you can handle this however you like. For example, you could put strip on the end here and get that back. However, this is not the best selector for us to use for the name, so we want to work something a bit different here. So I'm going to come back to this. I'm going to do h1 and do .get, and if I go to the page and we do our little hover tool in the developer, so I'm in inspect, you could of course do view source if you wanted to. We can see the h1 tag here has the name. So let's figure out what bits of information we actually want. So we're going to want to uncomment this, and we want the URL definitely, and so we're going to say, well, we definitely want the name of the product that we're on. But we've figured out the selector here, response.css h1 text. So we're going to put that in there, and that's going to return that information. Now let's get the price as well. And let's come back to the website over here. And we have P with a class of price color. So let's do response.css P price color. Again, text, close that out, do .get. And we have the string there. Now obviously I'm working with a string here. I'm not worrying about changing this into an actual value that we're going to use. We're just going to extract the data this way, like so. I'm going to exit out of the shell because we're happy that we've pulled the right selectors from the information that we wanted, just these 3 fields. I'm going to hit clear, and we're going to do Scrapy crawl again, Scrapy crawl books. And now when I go back up, here is the item that we have scraped from this page with the information that we are after. Now you could fill this in, have more fields, as long as the HTML is on that page and the information is. You can use the selectors, either CSS or XPath selectors if you prefer, to extract this information. But obviously we don't want to just go through and get single products. That's not going to work for us. We want to be able to go through the main page as well and get all of the product links, and then the next page, which is down here. Now this is 1,000 results on this page, so I'm going to go into a category and we will do it that way. So if we select something like one of these that has multiple, there we go, this category has multiple pages. So I'm going to grab this URL now, come back over here, and we'll do Scrapy shell again with this new URL, so we load that up, and we'll come back to our spider. So we're going to change the URL that we're going to go to. This is our category. This request will still work, but we don't want to send it to parse book because this is for a book page. We want to actually create a new function. So I'm going to call this parse list page. And we're going to create a new function, async def parse list page. And this is going to take in self and the response. And from here, we can now think about what we're going to actually want. We want all of the links to all of the individual product pages. So let's do this down here. So we'll do response.css, and we want something like, maybe we would want all of the A tags because they are where the links are. We can see we're going to get, if we went through this, there would be all of the links on the page, which is not what we want. So we're going to come back over to the page and we're going to just narrow it down so we can see all the products are under this list item, and then there's this article class product pod, and then here we have an A tag. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to go article here. So we'll do response.css. This was article, and it was a class, which in CSS selectors is a dot, and it was product underscore pod. And then we want the A tag that follows it. And now we want the attribute. So before we did .text, but now we're doing .attr, the attribute, and the attribute we want is the href. And now if we do .get, we are only going to get one, but we want all of them. But if we change this .get to .get all, we're now going to get everything that matches in a list the selector that we've given it, and that's going to give us all of our books. We can see here, but we actually have duplicates here. Now with duplicates, Scrapy would filter them out, but we can make our selector a bit better so we don't actually get them in the first place. So if I look back here, we can see here I was going for this and we were finding it, but there was 2 hrefs into this one. So I'm just going to add in here another thing. So go to the product pod and then go h3 and then go to the A tags. And now we don't have any more duplicates. So I'm going to copy this selector out. And I'm going to come back to our parse list page, and I'm going to say that our product URLs is going to be equal to this that we just got out. Now you'll notice that these are relative and not absolute, but that doesn't matter. Scrapy will handle that for us. So let's move this out of the way. And now we can do something like for URL in product URLs, and we can yield out here. Now we don't want to yield Scrapy request. We want to use the response follow because that's going to carry on and it's going to know where we are and it's going to know what we are working with. So the URLs are going to work. So we do response.follow, and then we give it the URL and we give it the callback to self.parseBook, because these are the book pages that match this parsing function. So we send them over here. Now there is a response.follow all, I believe, which would take a list. That would also work, but I'm just doing it this way. This is kind of the way that I got used to working with it. Now if I go ahead and exit out of my shell, save this and run Scrapy crawl books, and we can see that we went through multiple pages. I think we got 21 responses and we got 20 items, which matches how many there were on each page. But we also need to go to the next page. So I'm going to stay inside the parse list page function, and I'm going to say that our next page URL is going to be equal to response.css. And I'm going to go and find the next page here. So scroll down, grab the URL, grab the selector, li class next, and then the A and href. So we want to do li, which was class next A, and then the attribute href.get. And then we can do something like if next page URL, we can again yield out a response.follow on the next page URL, and make our callback this time to self.parseListPage, because when we follow the next page URL, we're going to end up on a list page again, which means we want to go back here and go back through over and over. So that's going to be pretty much it for our simple spider. We make our initial request to the URL that we give it. Then we follow through the process here asynchronously. So I'm going to go up here and we'll clear this out and we shall run this, and we should get something like, I can't remember how many pages there were. We got, where's the item? 48, and we have 48 books on this page, which matches. Now this is all well and good. We can see that we have the information out here as we were expecting it. We want to output this out to a file so we can save it. And to do that, the easiest way is to use Scrapy's default item processor and do -o to output it to our books.json file. You can also output to CSV and JSON lines by default, and any more that you want to if you build it out yourself. So I'm going to run this again. It's finished, and here is the scraped data from what we have created. So once again, URL, initial start URL, our async def start function, which creates the first Scrapy request, and then sends it off to here. And this function then goes through each page, gets the product links, sends each response from our product links to this function to pass the information, which is output, and then this page gets the next page URL. And if this doesn't exist, it just goes through and just carries on. So this is the starting block for our Scrapy project, and we're going to carry on in the next subsequent videos and lessons on building this out. We're going to add in items, middleware, pipelines, eventually all the way down to some more complicated settings, as well as deployment to Scrapy Cloud. So make sure you carry on and watch the next videos in the series. Thank you very much for watching.